I never thought a normal evening could change my life forever. That day was quiet. Too quiet. Mrs. Laura lived next door to me. She was a kind woman, always smiling softly, always asking if I needed anything. She didn't talk much, but her eyes said a lot. Her husband, Mark, was very different. Loud voice. Big smile. Always acting like life was perfect. But for the last few days, I hadn't seen Laura. No morning greeting. No light from her window at night. No sound of her soft footsteps. Something didn't feel right. That evening, I walked to her apartment door and knocked. No answer. I knocked again. Still nothing. I was about to leave when I heard a weak sound from inside, like someone struggling to breathe. My heart started beating fast. Laura? I called. No reply. The door was not locked. I slowly pushed it open. The room was dark and silent. Then I saw her. She was lying on the floor near the sofa. Her face was pale. Her lips were dry. There was blood on her clothes. Her body looked weak and tired, like she had been fighting pain for a long time. I rushed to her side and held her hand. It was cold. "Please stay with me," I whispered. Her eyes slowly opened. She tried to speak but couldn't. Tears rolled down the sides of her face. I reached for my phone to call for help. That's when I heard the sound of keys. The door opened behind me. Footsteps entered the room. And then a voice said, happily, "Hey, I'm home." I turned around. Mark was standing there, smiling. A big smile. Like nothing was wrong. Like he didn't see his wife dying on the floor. I shouted, "She's hurt. She's bleeding. Call an ambulance." He looked at Laura for a moment. Then he looked at me and smiled again. "She's fine," he said calmly. "She just needs rest." My hands started shaking. "She's dying," I said. He walked inside slowly, put his bag on the table, and said in a relaxed voice, "She always makes things look worse than they are." Laura squeezed my hand weakly. Her lips moved. "He left me," she whispered. My heart broke. I realized something terrible. She had been alone. For hours. Maybe days. And he knew. I called emergency services immediately. Mark looked annoyed. "You didn't have to do that," he said. I stared at him in shock. "How can you smile?" I asked. "Your wife is dying." He didn't answer. He just kept smiling. Laura's breathing became slower. Her eyes searched the room one last time. Tears filled her eyes. Then she stopped breathing. The room became silent. Mark took a deep breath, like a man who had just finished a long day. That smile on his face never disappeared. And at that moment I knew this was not an accident. This was only the beginning of a very dark truth. The ambulance arrived 10 minutes later, but Laura was already gone. The paramedics checked her pulse, looked at each other, and slowly shook their heads. One of them gently covered her face with a white sheet. I stood there frozen, unable to move, unable to speak. Mark stood near the wall, calm and quiet. Too calm. One of the paramedics asked him, "Sir, how long was she like this?" Mark replied easily, "I just got home." I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell them the truth. How he smiled, how he didn't care, how he acted like this was normal. But the words wouldn't come out. My throat felt tight, and my head was spinning. The police arrived soon after. They asked questions. Many questions. I told them everything I saw. I told them about the blood, her weak breathing, her fear. I told them how Mark came home smiling. Mark told his story calmly. He said Laura had been sick. He said she refused to go to the hospital. He said he went out to buy groceries. And while he spoke, he smiled. That smile never left his face. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Laura lying on the floor. I heard her weak voice. I saw Mark smile. The next morning, I met Mrs. Helen, the old woman who lived downstairs. She looked at me with sad eyes and said, "You found her, didn't you?" I nodded. Mrs. Helen sighed. I used to hear arguments from their apartment. Not loud shouting, but cold voices. Long silences. That kind of pain is worse. I felt a chill in my body. She was afraid of him, Mrs. Helen continued. I could see it in her eyes. I asked quietly, why didn't she leave? Mrs. Helen shook her head. Some people don't leave because they're broken slowly, day by day. 2 days later, Laura's funeral was held. Only a few people came. Mark stood beside the coffin, dressed in black, his face serious for the first time. But when he thought no one was watching, I saw it again. That small smile. I couldn't understand how someone could smile while burying the person they once promised to protect. After the funeral, Mark moved back into the apartment, like nothing had happened. But strange things began to happen. At night, I heard footsteps in their empty apartment. Sometimes I heard crying. Sometimes I heard a soft voice calling for help. I told myself it was just my imagination. But deep inside, I knew something was wrong. Very wrong. One evening, I saw Mark sitting on the stairs outside the building. He looked at me and smiled. You were very kind to Laura, he said. She talked about you sometimes. My body stiffened. What did she say? I asked. He leaned closer and whispered. She said you noticed things. That night, I found something at my door. A small envelope. Inside it was a folded paper. Written in shaky handwriting were just 4 words. He didn't let me leave. My hands trembled. Laura had written it. And suddenly I understood. She didn't die alone. She was left alone. I didn't sleep that night. Laura's words kept repeating in my mind. He didn't let me leave. I sat on my bed holding that paper, reading it again and again. Her handwriting was weak, uneven, like she wrote it in pain or fear. The next morning, I went to the police station. I showed them the note. The officer looked at it for a long time, then said, "We will add this to the case file." His voice was calm. Too calm. I felt angry. She didn't die naturally, I said. She was scared. She was bleeding. He ignored her. The officer nodded, but I could tell, without clear proof, nothing would happen. I walked out feeling helpless. That afternoon, Mrs. Helen knocked on my door. I think Laura left something for you, she said quietly.
My heart jumped.
What do you mean? She explained that Laura had once asked her to keep a small box, just in case. We went downstairs together. Mrs. Helen opened her cupboard and took out a small wooden box. It looked old, scratched, like it had been hidden many times. Inside were letters. Many letters, all written by Laura. We sat together and started reading. The letters were simple, not angry, just sad. Laura wrote about her marriage. She wrote how Mark changed after marriage, how he stopped listening, how he controlled her money, how he decided when she could go out, who she could meet. She wrote, "He doesn't hit me, but he hurts me every day." One letter made my hand shake. If I get sick, he gets angry. He says I'm a burden. Tears filled my eyes. Another letter said, "I feel invisible in my own home." That evening, Mark knocked on my door. My heart stopped for a moment. I opened it slowly. He smiled. I was wondering, he said, did Laura leave anything with you? I tried to stay calm.
No.
He looked into my eyes, like he was searching for something. If you find anything, he said softly, you should give it to me. Then he smiled again. After he left, I locked the door and leaned against it, shaking.
I knew then.
He was afraid. Afraid of what Laura had told the world. The next day, the police called me. They wanted to ask more questions. This time, I took the letters with me. I placed them on the table. These are her words, I said. She was suffering. The officers read silently. One of them finally said, "This changes things." For the first time, I felt a small hope. That night, as I lay in bed, I heard a sound. A soft knock. 3 times. I opened my door slowly. No one was there. But on the floor, there was another piece of paper. Just one line written on it. Some truths don't stay buried. I looked down the hallway. And far away, I saw Mark standing near the stairs, smiling. The police asked me to come again the next morning. This time, they said they wanted to understand Laura's last day. I took a deep breath and started telling everything I remembered. 2 days before she died, I had seen Laura in the hallway. She looked weak. Her face was pale, and she was holding her stomach. "Are you okay?" I asked. She forced a small smile. "Just tired." Then she whispered, "If something happens to me, please remember me." At that time, I didn't understand what she meant. Now, those words haunted me. The police later checked hospital records. They found that Laura had gone to a clinic alone a week before her death. The doctor wrote that she needed immediate care. Internal bleeding was suspected. She was told to go to the hospital. She never did.
Why?
Because Mark didn't allow it. One letter explained it clearly. He said hospitals cost too much. He said I was exaggerating. He told me to stay quiet. My hands shook as I read that letter again. She trusted him, and he chose to ignore her pain. That evening, I saw Mark leaving the building. He looked normal.
Calm. Happy.
I remembered something Laura wrote. He smiles the most when he knows I cannot speak. That sentence stayed in my mind. Late that night, someone knocked on my door again. This time, it was the police. They said Mark's phone records showed something strange. On the day Laura collapsed, Mark had received many calls from her. He ignored all of them. Instead, he went out. For hours. When he came back, he was smiling. The police searched Mark's apartment. They found medicine hidden in a drawer unopened. Medicine Laura was supposed to take. But she never got it, because he kept it away. I realized then. Laura didn't die suddenly. She died slowly. Alone. Ignored. Silenced. The next day, Mark was taken in for questioning. For the first time, his smile was gone. But before leaving, he looked at me and whispered. She should have stayed quiet. That was the moment I knew. Justice was finally waking up. Mark sat across from the police officers with his hands folded. At first, he was calm. Very calm. He spoke slowly, choosing his words carefully. He said Laura was weak. He said she refused help. He said he did everything he could. But the officers had facts now. They showed him the phone records. They showed him the clinic report. They showed him Laura's letters. For the first time, Mark's smile disappeared. One officer asked quietly, "Why didn't you take her to the hospital?" Mark looked down. Then he said, "She was always complaining." That answer filled the room with silence. Another officer said, "You ignored her calls while she was bleeding." Mark's voice became sharp. "She was dramatic," he shouted. "She wanted attention." I felt sick hearing those words. That was how he saw her pain. As a problem. The police called me in to give my final statement. Mark avoided my eyes. I told him everything again. How I found Laura, how cold her hand was, how he smiled when he walked in. I said one thing very clearly. She wasn't alone because no one cared. She was alone because the one who should have saved her didn't. Mark clenched his fists. The medical report came back. Cause of death. Untreated internal bleeding. It was slow, painful, and preventable. The doctor said one sentence that changed everything. If she had reached the hospital even 2 hours earlier, she would have lived. That was it. That was the truth Mark couldn't escape. Mark was arrested that evening. As the officers took him away, he looked at me. No smile this time. Only fear. That night, I went home and sat quietly. For the first time since Laura died, the building felt peaceful.
No footsteps. No whispers. No smiling shadows.
Just silence. But justice wasn't finished yet. Laura's story still needed to be heard. The courtroom was quiet. Very quiet. Mark sat in the front, wearing a plain shirt. He looked smaller than before. No confidence.
No smile.
Laura's letters were placed on the judge's table. One by one, they were read out loud. Her simple words filled the room. He controls my life. He tells me my pain is nothing. I feel alone even when he is beside me. People listened. Some lowered their heads. Some wiped their eyes. For the first time, Laura was being heard. The doctor testified next. He explained how internal bleeding works, how pain increases slowly, how the body becomes weak, how help at the right time saves lives. Then he said, clearly, she did not need to die. Mark's lawyer tried to defend him. He said Mark didn't understand the seriousness. He said Mark made a mistake. But the judge asked one simple question. Why did he ignore her calls? There was no answer. I was called to the stand. My voice shook, but I spoke. I described the moment. I found Laura. Her cold hand. Her weak breath. Her fear. Then I said the sentence that stayed in everyone's mind. He came home smiling, while she was dying. Mark looked down. After hours of silence, the judge spoke. Mark was found guilty of criminal neglect. He was sentenced to prison. The courtroom remained silent.
No celebration.
Only relief. Weeks later, I visited Laura's grave. I placed fresh flowers and whispered, "You're not alone anymore." The wind moved softly, like an answer. Life slowly returned to normal. But I never forgot Laura, because her story taught me something important. Silence can kill, and sometimes the loudest smile hides the darkest truth. After the trial ended, life slowly moved forward. The building felt different now, lighter. The hallway where Laura once walked no longer felt heavy. The apartment where she suffered stayed empty. No more arguments. No more cold silence. Sometimes I still thought about her. About how many times she must have asked for help. About how many times she was ignored. I began speaking up more. When I heard someone crying behind closed doors, I paid attention. When someone looked afraid, I didn't look away. Laura taught me that silence can be dangerous. That ignoring pain is a kind of violence. One evening, Mrs. Helen came to my door. She smiled softly and said, "You did the right thing." I shook my head. "I wish I had knocked earlier," I said. She replied gently, "You listened when it mattered." Months passed. Spring came. Flowers bloomed near Laura's grave. I visited often, not with sadness, but with respect. I told her, "Your voice saved others." And I believed it.
Sometimes people ask me about that night.
I tell them the truth. I tell them I found her dying alone. And I tell them he came home smiling.
But I also tell them this.
Her story didn't end in silence. It ended in truth. Not all pain is loud. Not all abuse leaves marks. And not all smiles are kind. If someone asks for help, listen. Because sometimes listening can save a life.